Voaden.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'd like to begin by congratulating the member for Whitehaven and Workington for bringing his private member's bill to the House, and I'm proud to be one of the co-sponsors. It has clearly been a complicated journey to get to this point, and the bill may not resemble quite what he originally had in mind. But the sheer fact of bringing this bill forward has lit up a national conversation about the impact on our children of smartphone use and social media. A conversation that was growing ever louder, but which has now spilled over passionately into the inboxes of nearly every member of this House. This bill may not be as ambitious as some would like, and the wheels may turn slowly in this place, far slower than the lightning pace of modern tech. But I would like to assure every one of my constituents in South Devon who wrote to me about the bill and who campaign loudly on this topic that their voices have been heard, and that within the bounds of our political system, we as MPs and as parents and grandparents have not only heard them, but we share their concerns. I hope that today is just a first step in a journey which will be far-reaching and hopefully fairly swift. I know I'm not alone to be somewhat disappointed that the bill we see today is but a shadow of its former self, and that the government has been so timid in what it is willing to do to try and save our children and young people from something that is clearly causing them considerable harm. Which is why the Liberal Democrats have decided to pick up the baton and table an amendment to the Data User and Access Bill. Our amendment will call on the government to bring UK data into line with many other UK data law into line with many other European countries by raising the minimum age a user must be before an internet company can collect, process and store their data without parental consent to 16. I do look forward to seeing the guidance from the UK Chief Medical Officer on the impact of smartphones and social media on children. 6 years is a long time in the tech world, and we know that much has changed since this guidance was last written in 2019. And I also welcome funding for more research into the impacts of social media and phone use. I expect the new research will not differ too much from what has already been written, following studies from various developed countries, including the UK, Japan, Canada and Australia. That over the last 10 years, a period in which smartphone usage has exploded, the number of mental health admissions to hospital in teenagers has risen by 65%. That admissions for eating disorders among girls aged 11 to 15 have gone up by a staggering 638%. That childhood myopia is up 50%, that ADHD diagnoses are up 56%, and that more and more children are struggling with difficult speech and language challenges. No, we cannot say for sure that there is a direct causal link, but we can see the trend lines in the graphs, and we know they started rising before the pandemic was ever heard of, and we know it's not just the UK experiencing such troubling developments. Madam Deputy Speaker, we do a lot to protect our children in this country, and that's down to a mixture of practice, custom and legislation. We generally don't let our children smoke or drink. We certainly don't let them drive cars. We put babies in ever more sophisticated car seats, and we know that it's not a good idea to put fizzy drinks in babies' bottles. And yet, a recent Ofcom report said that 100% of 17-year-olds have a mobile phone, 28% of 5 to 7-year-olds have one, and most worryingly still, 17% of 3 to 4-year-olds have one. Yet medical professionals from all disciplines tell us of the harm children are experiencing from long hours glued to a screen. As a proud co-sponsor of this bill, I too have heard from health professionals who've given evidence to us on mental health, obesity, eyesight and more. And we also heard heartrending stories from parents whose children had been subject to the most horrific online abuse, and from some who have unbearably lost their precious children as a result of harms in the digital world. While their stories were extreme and deeply troubling, somehow, incredibly, it didn't even seem that shocking that the online world had wrought such devastating harm into real lives. Because what is happening online is clearly impacting the everyday lives of children and teenagers, and we, as responsible adults and legislators, have a duty to try and mitigate these harms. I'm thinking now particularly of the horrible, dangerous misogyny of the likes of Andrew Tate, which is being lapped up by boys who are under his influence, boys who then spread his misogynistic hate speech. I'm thinking of the violent pornography which is being accessed and viewed by children as young as 9 or 10. Pornography that isn't just naked pictures like you'd find in an old-fashioned top-shelf magazine, I'm told, but violent porn Not old enough, thank you. But violent porn that celebrates assault and rape. We know that this is leading to an increase in harmful practices such as strangulation, that it warps the way young people view sexual relationships, and that it is directly impacting on the health and well-being, particularly of young women across the country. Yesterday, this chamber heard some brilliant and impassioned speeches from many honourable women members, timed to coincide with International Women's Day tomorrow. And on a day that celebrates women, we think about girls too. And I don't want our girls to think that they have to share nude photos to be liked, or to worry themselves sick about the shape of their body to the point that they stop eating. We've heard about the rise in children who have speech and language challenges. It's known that sticking a baby in front of an iPad will not help it learn to communicate. Babies need interaction with human faces and voices to learn. And we've heard about how children's eyesight is worsening because they spend so many hours looking at a closely held screen. And we all know about the incessant rise in poor mental health, anxiety and depression among teenagers. Parents across my constituency of South Devon are desperate to protect their children, but overwhelmed by the digital world and the power it has over young people. They want us to support them with legislation so that they can push back against the might of the tech giants. And we must not let the tech giants lobby us in the way the tobacco companies did so successfully for decades. Children are addicted to these screens because of wicked algorithms that lure them in and keep them hooked, struggling with their body image because they don't look like the influencers they are watching, depressed at their lives because they don't resemble the doctored, airbrushed Instagram image of perfection they see on their screens, and brainwashed by those influencers who spew toxic messages through their pages. They know this, but they find it hard to counteract it. And we know the brightest brains in the tech world have designed social media apps to do exactly this. One former Facebook employee said, "You have a business model designed to engage you and get you to basically suck as much time out of your life as possible, and then selling that attention to advertisers." We must unlock the potential of technology by designing it with children and young people in mind. Our amendment to the data bill would not ban children under 16 from social media, but more importantly, online services would need to change how they deal with children's data and create a less addictive, more child-friendly online environment. Our amendment will call on the government to prioritise robust standards for digital technology so that rights and privacy are upheld by design and default. Madam Deputy Speaker, in Devon, 2,591 parents have signed the pact saying they will not buy their child a smartphone. But we know that tech use is one of the biggest causes of friction in families, and parents need our support to back that choice. It is a public health matter. The Liberal Democrats are open to the idea of a legal ban on smartphone use in schools, enshrining existing guidance into the law, and we do hope that the government will look seriously at this. This measure should not be about restricting freedoms, but about creating an environment conducive to learning and free from distractions. We also understand the need for discretion, and exceptions must be made for young carers or children who use smartphones to monitor health conditions, ensuring fairness and practicality. Parents must be empowered to protect their children online, including through digital literacy education, and advice and support for parents on best practice is key. I also want to see a public health programme similar to those we have seen on seatbelts and smoking over the years, so that no parent can be left unaware of the potential harms of letting small children become addicted to a device that will cause so much harm as they grow.